Edelweiss and CNBC TV 18 present Change India, what India needs.
Welcome back to Change India, our ongoing series where we are discussing reforms needed by various sectors of the Indian economy. Today we are discussing financial services sector, and I have an eminent panel of Mrs. Usha Thorat, A.K. Purwar, Ajay Srinivasan, Deepak Mittal and Anurag Jain from Delhi. Let me get with you gentlemen and on the payment, on the inclusion piece. Will NBFCs buy this concept of becoming business correspondents of banks? If that comes, then I think suddenly the business correspondent mechanism could become very lively. You think that will happen, Deepak?
So, Lata, I think what Mr. Purwar and Thorat also said, if there's an economically viable model, and I think one thing is all NBFCs are not the same type. There are different types of NBFCs.
But will someone buy at all, you think?
I think if it's an economically viable model where one can reach out, get a set of revenues without disproportionate costs, and if transactions are happening and maybe with a set of transactions asset products follow, there is no reason why an NBFC would not be
but is it, the draft rules are in the public space. What is your sense? Because business correspondents very much are the reason or one method by which the Jan Dhan Yojana should succeed. So you have to tell me whether you all find the current rules good enough.
So I think it will depend upon what is the reach and penetration of a particular NBFC. If you're talking about an NBFC which is in a predominantly an urban area, of course, the interest there would be, reasonably non-existent. But if you already have a business which thrives on a set of customers which have an overlap, now those customers are getting bank accounts which are already serviced. There's no reason for an NBFC not to, leverage this network, whether as a business correspondent or through any other means for them to participate. The key thing.
So you think some NBFCs would be interested?
If there is an economically viable model and if products are there. So, starting with 4 products is a great idea. Rolling out asset products. If you get transaction history which NBFCs can make use, or for that matter even MFIs can make use for lending. There is of course a viable model, and there will be people who will be keen to participate.
Okay, Ajay, your comment on this as well, since you run perhaps the largest NBFC as well, where does the payment bank fit in all this? My sense was that was a great inclusion instrument.
Yeah, I think to build on the point that's just been made, I think reach is the most critical element ultimately in getting the inclusion. And I think the NBFCs, if you look at reach, barring probably the MFIs who have some depth of reach, I don't think most other NBFCs would have the depth to really make inclusion more viable than it's been in the past. And to just come back to the point made earlier on the current scheme, I still think we need to address the issue of reach, because if you're still going to depend on the banking system, it still has the original limitations of reach, because the banking system by definition doesn't reach across everywhere. And I think that's where the payment bank actually is an interesting idea, because it does bring into play a much broader distribution into play. And therefore the potential and the network you have to be able to reach, which is a very important part of inclusion, obviously is improved. I think the commercial point Mrs. Thorat has referred to is important, because I think the DBT Commission was a big stumbling block in terms of making that commercially viable.
No, there is a reason why I am asking you the payment bank angle, because your group has a telecom piece as well, and a big one at that. So you think under the current rules, y'all would be interested in that?
Yeah, so I think definitely we have the asset and we have the network to be able to leverage that, and I think it should make sense with the network that we have. The key there is, I think the balances on mobile wallets, if you look at, has traditionally been very low, and therefore you don't make too much money purely from NIM. No. You'll have to make money from transaction charges, and it's still to be established what kind of volume you're going to get there. And you'll get some reduction in churn in your existing customer base, because that's the other source of revenue for telecom companies. No. So revenue is going to come from a very different source to traditional, to
exactly.
traditional models.
But will that give you stickiness for the telecom service provider himself?
Yes.
Because after all, you all are largely on prepaid.
Yes.
So the stickiness of the prepaid guy will be there for you if you also offer
That's right.
digital money.
That's right.
Okay, so you see that the two dovetailing, the Jan Dhan Yojana and the payments bank at some point?
I think it's important to realize that the payments bank will be offering only payment services, essentially.
Yes, not loans.
So not even
they're mandated
savings. They may be able to offer insurance as a third-party provider. The important thing is that payments banks can also be used by mainstream banks for other products. So I think that is the opportunity again. So this whole business correspondent thing can do in a variety of ways.
Okay.
SHG federations can become business correspondents.
Okay.
So, you can visualize a whole way in which ultimately it is the reach. It is the reach, it's also the connectivity. Lata, I would really, tell the Joint Secretary that this is a big problem. We may talk about online, but many places you go, and I've been to several places, you're just not connected.
Yeah, I was going
And I think when you go to even a bank branch, CBS, you can't do a transaction,
I agree. Actually,
even at a branch.
That was the point I want to now place before Anurag Jain. Mr. Jain, this is a very serious issue. The physical infrastructure, the bank chairman I spoke with recently, just before coming into the show, Andhra Bank said 160 villages in his area of 2,200 villages handed over to him don't have the digital infrastructure. I spoke to the Orissa food minister to ask him about DBT, because that's one state with a genuine lack of connectivity problem. He was almost up in arms saying that 22% of my tribals have absolutely no connectivity, and therefore DBT doesn't work for me at all. Your thoughts, one, on this lack of infrastructure, and two, on where do you see Payments Bank as, bridging any of this digital problem?
There are two issues. The connectivity is already within our radar when we are designing this scheme. Actually, the way we designed the scheme, it is very inclusive. Almost everybody was talked to. For connectivity, we had discussions with the Telecom Ministry. This point was flagged. PMO has given special targets to Telecom Ministry also. And this will be fast-tracked in the area where the connectivity is an issue. We have actually identified about 26,000 odd places where we intend to set up our sub-service areas, and that list has been handed over to them. So they are looking on priority on those issues. And when we were designing our scheme, we were very clear that barring the connectivity issue problem areas, rest of the country we would finish very quickly, and this problem has to go hand in hand. When the connectivity comes, our problem will be sorted out. We'll do the extension part of it. On the payment banks, yes, as I look at this, banking system is providing one basic infrastructure. Payment bank will come, MFIs, NBFCs are there, then mobile wallets, etc. This kind of services given by the telecom operators, which RBI has now permitted, all of them will come. So this will create an ecosystem of competition from which ultimately the citizens of this country and villages of this country will benefit. And the quality of services in the rural areas will go up. We are aware of this connectivity problem. We have actually identified pockets also. I know that there are areas in Uttarakhand, there are areas in Northeast, there are areas in Andaman and Nicobar, and even in other states also there would be about 5 to 10% places where connectivity will be an issue.
Yeah, Mr. Jain.
But look at, if we can cover 80 to 85% of the country quickly, and this remaining 10 to 15% places can fall in place within the next 1 year.
I agree. Mr. Jain,
That's the kind of thing
I just wanted to know, are you in dialogue with the Reserve Bank on Payment Bank, and are you all at any point in time talking about how to involve small banks or payment banks into your Jan Dhan Yojana? Any conversation on that at all?
We had discussions. I think my secretary had discussions with the governor, and with two DGs I myself had meetings. Issues are, we had discussion on this payment bank also, but the way we look at right now, draft guidelines have come. It may take maybe 2 years before these things really find their feet on the field. And if we really want to go fast, so this is one infrastructure, as I just mentioned, we intend to set up this whole thing within a year. And now Honorable Prime Minister has preponed the target to 26 January. So as we look at it, 80 to 85% places where connectivity is not an issue, we would make that happen. And remaining 10 to 15%, there could be a little spillover, which we are in dialogue, and will, as and when it comes, we'll bring it to the notice of the concerned authorities and see how it goes forward.
I do like your enthusiasm, Mr. Jain, but somehow at the moment I'm still a little worried that state governments and NBFCs and payment banks are all a lot of, 100 small steps, but are they all moving in one direction, and are they talking to each other, is still for me a bit of an issue, but I hope I am wrong. Let me just conclude this inclusion conversation with one word. Okay, Ajay, do you see this completely changing the face of, financial services or even the Indian economy?
You're talking about just the Jan Dhan Yojana or?
No, inclusion. Jan Dhan, payments, MFIs, a bank license to Bandhan and more licenses.
I think obviously inclusion is a key issue, Lata, but I think there are several other aspects to inclusion that I think also need to be brought into play, because one thing is to open a bank account, and that's critical, but we still have 50% of savings going into physical assets. We still have very low ownership of most other financial services products. So therefore, inclusion, actually, even the people who are by definition included today, who have a bank account, are actually excluded from a number of other financial products in the country. So I think the inclusion agenda should be really broader than just bank accounts. I think that's an important first step.
At the moment, the bank account should become a deposit and then a loan product, which I agree is not happening.
Yes.
No, I'm asking the two of you because you all represent, in a sense, outside the formal banking system. Deepak, your thoughts? Are we on the throes of a revolution in terms of getting the big pyramid in?
I think, let me put it this way. Is this one of the most significant steps we have seen in this direction? Yes. Is that enough? I think the jury is still out and we'll have to wait. And I think, as very rightly said, how many meaningful products and services can be rolled out with banking as being the starting point will define how successful inclusion will become. Okay. It will also make it economically more viable if there are more products and services.
Okay. Well, I would dare to add that how successful will this be will also depend on whether we are able to provide 24/7 electricity and whether we are able to provide all-weather roads all over the country. Money is useful only if you can use it for commerce, and for that commerce you need a road and you need the electricity and the water supply. So really, all arms of government have to work together. I have to take a break on this. We've gone on for a goodish bit, but other areas of financial services reforms which we need to discuss, the banking system and the NBFC system, all that in a minute after this break.
Edelweiss and CNBC TV 18 present Change India, what India needs.